Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my Mana Slammer, aka a Doryani's Fist Berserker that stacks mana. It's a better idea than it sounds, okay? I think, maybe, I don't know. This character's level 80. I have pretty scuffed gear on right now, kind of just stuff I threw on to just make the character operate. I respec the second I could equip Doryani's Fist at level 63. And, okay, I know it looks bad, guys. I know it looks like I have a problem, like I'm using Trader, you know, and I don't have a situation, okay? I'm just fixing my res temporarily while I actually craft some real gear, because right now this character's gear is just completely potato. I'll explain the concept of what's going on, though. So the idea is pretty simple. We're using Doryani's Fist, which at baseline is a skill that has a roughly 600% damage effectiveness, so it's a pretty high effectiveness of damage. It comes with hits can't be evaded. What else? And it comes with 30% less attack speed, and base unarmed attack speed is pretty slow. So the idea is it's a really chunky lightning hit that also hits kind of slow, but it has a pretty big base effectiveness, and it's basically an innate 5-link when you have it all set up, ready to go. And it comes with hits can't be evaded, which is nice. Now, my plan for the character, and looking at my tree, you might say this looks like it looks bad, but hey, hear me out. It is to stack a bunch of mana, which that means arcane cloak gives us a bunch of flat damage, which gets basically multiplied by that 600% damage effectiveness, which is pretty big. And then on top of that, if we mix in something like a indigon for the spell damage, if you've spent mana recently, whenever we spend mana with arcane cloak, we get a huge massive flat as well as a large amount of spell damage, having just spent like 6k mana. It roughly gives us what is that, it gives us like 600% damage or something, just right into the build. But then that gets multiplied by Red Blade Banner in combination with Battle Mage's Cry. Battle Mage's Cry, if I can find it, I have it over here. Makes all spells basically get 150%, or not spells, spell damage get multiplied by 150%. Eventually, when I fix this and turn this into not Trader, I'm going to do a Impossible Escape to grab 40% Warcry buff effect. And I might eventually get Boots, which I think I can get buff effect on my Boots as well, which should end up meaning when I go and I press Battle Mage's Cry, I'm getting over 200% of my spell damage as actual damage applied to me, meaning I get a lot of damage from indigon, which then is a pretty big multiplier on me hitting the ground really hard. Even though I have a tree that's mostly just specking mana all over the place and not really specking damage, it'll result in us having some pretty big mana. Also, Red Blade Banner mixed with Berserker allows us to have really good rage up time. Berserker has a lot of speed. I think Berserker's a nice choice here because it makes Doryani's Fist not this real slow, clunky thing, but actually a pretty fast little bop, hit the ground and move on type of situation. Right now, the only expensive item I have in this build, as far as I remember, is the Unnatural Instinct. I'm gonna cut this out of the video. As I was saying, Unnatural Instinct's the only expensive item I think I have in this build. Ultimately, I'm not even sure this is the correct play. Like, I think I probably should just spec the mana nodes, not worry about the little bit boost of AoE I'd have here, and then get another Jewel Socket here. I think that's probably actually the play, and then I'd save a lot of cost in the build, because Doryani's Fist is cheap, Replica Calm's Heart is cheap, these random rares I threw on, and Itzuri's Foible, these aren't particularly expensive items, although the Foible, this was like almost a perfect roll, so I ended up paying like 2.5 divines for this, I believe, just because it was almost a perfect roll. But the perfect roll really doesn't matter too much, because quite frankly the mana regen rate isn't as important, because a large amount of my mana sustain is actually coming from Essence Sap, max leech recovery rate for mana, mixed in with the Worm's Molt. The weird thing is, I'm like starting to learn leech mechanics now, is the total recovery thing is basically Leech got redesigned where fast-hitting builds took advantage of Leech quite well, and slow-hitting builds got screwed. Basically what happened is your max Leech rate for mana starts out at like 20% per second, but you have to get 10 separate Leech instances to get to that 20%. It starts out at 2% is the maximum amount per second per specific Leech instant you create, I think is how it works. Moral of the story is, if you get a bunch of total recovery like what Worm's Molt is giving here, you take that 2% base and it ends up becoming like 25 or whatever percent based on this 1100% increased total recovery. And then I have another 100% here. Moral of the story is, I only have to hit the enemy once and maybe technically twice, just a little bit to get a little bit extra closer to our max leech rate. But in this character currently, I get about 36% of my mana pool per second just from leech, which is pretty cool. On top of, we do have some nice regen on top of that, which I think is kind of fun because one of the main things I've struggled with mana builds recently is having a decent sustain for it, because I think it's really hard to get regen now. Regen got hit on so many different angles, and this leech is actually not too high investment because the nodes over here are actually pretty good. I kind of want to get precise technique. I kind of want to get these mana nodes anyway, so it doesn't really feel like too much travel to begin with. And leech is a large amount of mana per second, especially considering you have a large mana pool. It actually works out quite well in my opinion. So that's just a new thing I'm getting used to and kind of liking with going for leech in a mana build, which I didn't ever conceptualize or think about doing, and it works out pretty well. Some other things about the character are I'm forcing in precise technique for 40% more damage, but I'm not sure if this is the right decision, but I'm going to try to play into Sublime Vision, Purity of Elements. Again, I probably should be playing into Clarity and not Sublime Vision, but at the same time, I really want... Moral of the story is I'm not sure I'm going to keep this. I might keep Sublime Vision, I might not. I haven't really decided, because I would like to still be able to run Clarity. I'd like to still be able to run Precision, but Sublime Vision limits that. Yada, yada, yada. Moral of the story is I just have to make sure my accuracy is higher than my life pool to get the 40% more damage. I know I don't need accuracy to hit because I have hits can't be evaded. That comes with Doryani's Fist. But at the same time, I do want this multiplier because the other option is Elemental Overload, and it's really hard to get this to be a consistent uptime, and I'd rather just have the consistency of it's always there versus this option, or versus crit, which crit would be fairly hard to do, fairly high investment to get crit going on this character where I have basically no crit to begin with. It would involve, for one, we'd have to start out with rig walls, have to start looking at claw nodes, and all of a sudden we don't have mana, and we don't have our primary scaling vector really going very high, stuff like that. So anyways, that's a brief synopsis of the character, or the concept behind the characters. Mana stacking with Doryani's Fist with Berserker. The playstyle, of course, is we do this a little bit. Basically, the multipliers are as follows. Intimidating Cry is double damage. That means whenever we hit with Intimidating Cry, we deal a hell of a lot of damage. Battle Mage's Cry is, hey, all that spell damage we're getting from things like Indigon and a little bit from Iron Will, all that is going to be applicable to the character. Enduring Cry is, hey, do I want some endurance charges, a little bit of extra res, a little bit of recovery if I got hit recently, stuff like that. All that plays into, and Seismic is AoE, all that plays into like some useful basically bonuses to the character. But the other thing it's playing around is when we press Berserk, we start draining Berserk. If you are using War Cries over 25, it subtracts rage. If it's under 25, it shoots us all the way back up to full. You can see we can keep up our Berserk for quite a while. If I'm like looking at it and intentionally doing it, I could keep this up for a significant amount of time. Now granted, when I'm mapping, I'm not looking at the number this intently. I'm just kind of pressing War Cries and I'm just going, and stuff is fine. But this is what it looks like if you were actually like trying to maintain your Berserk for a really long time. You could, right? You could micromanage this. I don't want to, but I'm just saying you get a decent amount of Berserk uptime with your War Cries, and on top of that, they provide useful benefits. This is not going to be the most feels good playstyle, but for something different, and for the fact we're playing a mana stacking Doryani's Fist build, I'm okay with it, just because the novelty and the weirdness of this character has me intrigued. Now, I'll go ahead and do a showcase. Since I'm level 80, I'm going to do... What did I do for a showcase? I think I did like a level... I don't know. I did an atoll that was like tier 11, I think. Is this tier 11? Yeah, I did a tier 11 atoll. So this will give you a peninsula just to show you what the character looks like on a tier 13 map. This character is not very well put together right now. It's a super scuffed setup, so please don't judge me too harshly for what you're about to witness. But I'll showcase what it looks like on a tier 13 map, and it's pretty much just War Crying every now and then slamming. That's all there is to it. I don't really think about too much besides those two things, and eventually I'll get the character set up so it's not using Trader, which that'll happen soon. I promise it'll happen soon. It's just something I haven't really thought about in recent times, and you'll notice there's a large influx in damage if I have Arcane Cloak. If I don't have Arcane Cloak, the damage by comparison is like pathetic, right? So that was the difference in Arcane Cloak versus no Arcane Cloak. You kind of could see it there. The first couple hits were without Arcane Cloak. Then when we got Arcane Cloak, the damage went way up. Now, if you time everything right, you have your intimidating cry, your arcane cloak, your indigon expenditure, you've done your war cry recently or whatever. All those things tie in together with Berserk. You hit immensely hard. You usually like one-shot the boss and stuff like that. I don't spend too much time trying to like time it or anything. We still hit pretty hard even without all that stuff timed together, but this is one of those builds where war cries and there's like the management or whatever, and it's weird. It doesn't have the quality of life, but it's still a character that I'm enjoying regardless. So anyways, this is the build I'm working on. This is just really a progress video, just I want to share because I thought it was interesting and kind of a fun build so far. And I'll probably maybe make another video when I actually have real gear on this character and do some real endgame content, stuff like that. But anyways, as always, thanks for watching, Exiles, and take care. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Peace out.